Speaking of marriage vows, is it okay for you to omit the obviously negative parts, like for worse, for poorer, in sickness? Hello and welcome back. So it's become a trend lately that people at their weddings intentionally omit the negative parts of their vows. And for some people, the rationale is that not saying the negative parts and speaking by faith only the positives, they are more likely to have a good marriage. Is that true? Is that the right thing to do? Are there any consequences for omitting a part of the vows? As a matter of fact, we should even ask ourselves, what is the importance of the marriage vows and where do they come from? The closest thing to what we have as marriage vows today dates back from a prayer book called the Sarum Rite from 1549 in medieval England, a book that documented different ritual practices that were carried out in the church, including marriage. And the wedding vows as professed today, whether by Catholics, Christians, or non-denominational believers, haven't changed much from the original in the Sarum Rite of the Book of Prayer. Many people argue that you can trace the origins of wedding vows back to scriptures, perhaps because they are looking at it to be spelled out like the version we have today. But I think, in my experience, anything good, valuable, and really resourceful, you can always find it in the scriptures, at least if you know how to look. And when you look at scripture like Genesis chapter 2, verse 23, and how God introduces Eve to Adam and his ensuing monologue, and you look at the entire context, verse 18 and 19 of Genesis 2 describes how God created the animals from the ground and brought them to Adam to name them. And verse 20 is critical because it says, "So Adam gave the names to all cattle, to the birds of the air, and to every beast of the field. But for Adam there was not found a helper comparable to him." So it gives the impression that Adam wasn't so much naming the animals as much as he was also looking for a helpmeet. And 21 and 22 describes how God made Eve and presented her to Adam. Verse 23, "And Adam said, This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man." And he goes on to say in verse 24, "Therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and they shall become one flesh." So if you look at the context, this actually looks like a full wedding ceremony that just happened. Because after that, they were considered married. That's why verse 25 says, "And they were both naked, the man and his wife, and were not ashamed." In my opinion, that is the first wedding vow that we can see, because if you break it down, it's quite significant in that it actually paints the picture of what the marriage is supposed to be like, which is basically what those vows, even today, especially the ones from the Sarum Rite, explain. So the marriage is supposed to survive and thrive both in good and bad times, both when there is excess and abundance and when there is lack, and also both in health or sickness. Because that's not very different from verse 24 saying the two shall become one flesh. If you're one flesh, you technically can't separate. However, throughout history, as men became more developed and developed language and writing and contracts, we see in the case of Moses where he's introducing divorce. So when we look at the more modern marriage vows, we understand that it was also coined with divorce in mind. And that's why you see terms like "till death do us part" included, which was not in the original Sarum Rite version from 1549. So we can confidently conclude that, assuming that couples may not always have a pre-marriage counseling or class to prepare them for what they are going into, the marriage vows were coined and designed to help the couple fully grasp the gravity, the importance, and the weight of what they were getting themselves into. So therefore, it goes without saying that it's not some kind of wish you're making that you can decide to not wish the negative part, but no, it's just a profession, like an anthem, like a creed that you declare to remind yourself of your responsibilities and your role inside the marriage. Because the obvious fact we know is, faith or no faith, your marriage is going to go through tough times. There will be days someone is sick, your spouse, your children. There will be days where you would have affluence, days where you're broke. There will be great days, there will be challenging days. But all of that are part of the process to bring you closer together. So deciding not to profess that in your vows, thinking that somehow you're dispelling them away from your marriage, doesn't really change anything. So that's it. In my opinion, I think it's wise to actually repeat the entire vow so that you're conscious and aware, subconsciously imprinting in your mind the gravity and responsibility of what you're getting yourself into. Reciting just the favorable part of the vow creates unrealistic expectations in the minds of many, which is perhaps one of the reasons why we also see so many marriages failing or breaking apart, because people think they can wish themselves into a happy ever after of only good times, only prosperity, and only health. But let me know in the comments below, what are your thoughts about this? Do you agree with it? Do you disagree? And for what reason? Please share all of that below. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. If you're new here, turn that bell on so you don't miss our next video. A big shout out and thank you to all our patrons for helping us create content like this. You too can support the channel. The link is down below. So I am Bodas Jumese from Wisdom for Dominion, and until the next video, stay blessed.